Hi everyone, David and Gino here, taking a look at the feature race at Del Mar on Saturday. It is the Grade 1 Del Mar Oaks. This race for the 3-year-old fillies going the mile and an eighth distance on the turf course. And Gino, we've got a couple of East Coast shippers in this race that are taking advantage of the Grade 1 status of this race. They, though, are not the favorite on the morning line. That honor goes to the number 1, I Scream, You Scream, who has been perfect so far in her 3 starts out in Southern California.
Now she's going to have to stretch out from the mile to the mile and an eighth, see if she can go a little farther. And she'll definitely be facing a tougher group in here, David. As you look at the series of races that is down at Del Mar for these 3-year-old fillies, the San Clemente was not as tough because you're going to have a couple of those shippers that you mentioned. You'll also have a horse that had a little bit of trouble in that race. We'll be hoping for a smoother trip here. So I think I Scream, You Scream, while definitely the horse to beat, she's going to really have to be on her A game to get the better of this group.
One advantage that I Scream, You Scream may possess in this race is her tactical speed and versatile running style as we take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this Del Mar Oaks, because there's not a ton of speed in this race. We've seen the number 8 Sea Dancer go forward on occasion, but she's certainly not a consistent front running type. And the number 1 I Scream, You Scream from that inside draw, you've got to think that the connections are going to look to be forward with her, especially given that she's trying to go this distance for the first time. I'm sure they'd be happy to back down the pace a little bit.
Yeah, and for some reason, if somebody else wanted to get crazy and go out front, she has sat off horses before. She's not necessarily a one-dimensional horse, but I think at the mile and an eighth against a field like this, she'll want to try to use that tactical advantage against some of the deeper closers in here. So yeah, she's definitely the one they'll have to run down and the horse to beat.
Note that the number 5 Buku does have that LP flag over her chiclet. She has the highest Timeform US late pace rating in the race, hoping that some pace does develop on the front end. We'll get to her chances in just a little bit, but let's begin with the number 1 I Scream, You Scream, and take a look at her most recent start in the San Clemente when she was a 3/4 length winner over today's rival Zona Verde. Medoro also in this race. We'll get to those contenders a little bit later, but I Scream, You Scream, she passed her first 2-turn test here, doing so setting the pace every step of the way, took some pressure at different stages of the race, and was able to finish this off pretty well, changing leads in the stretch to win professionally in the end. She had been very visually impressive in the first couple of starts of her career sprinting. I'm not sure that this last win was quite as flashy as those first 2 performances, and now she's got to answer the question of getting the mile and an eighth distance, showing a little more stamina than she has in her prior starts. If she's the 8-5 on the morning line, that's a little light for me on a horse trying something for the first time.
Yeah, I agree. And just kind of reading intent into this race, too. You have a horse to the outside that looks like the other speed. So I think that horse might be really forced. Sea Dancer, they're going to have to go. Then there are 2 other horses in this race that aren't necessarily as fast as I Scream, You Scream, but I think quality horses that can press and that will probably try to be closer and make sure that they're in more striking range in this race. So I just feel like there are going to be a wall of challengers in this race compared to the last time we saw I Scream, You Scream. And I feel like it's just going to be a lot more difficult this time around. But no doubt about it, she's hard to leave out completely of the exotics. But I just feel like this is going to be a tougher group this time, David.
Phil D'Amato has 3 runners in this field. Another one of his is the number 2, Circle of Trust. We'll take a look at her most recent race when she was a winner of the Grade 3 Honeymoon back in early June at Santa Anita. So she's been off for about 2.5 months coming into this race off a brief freshening, but she was in good form when we last saw her, winning this race quite convincingly, probably not beating nearly as strong a field as some others are exiting. There were some key players who were not showing up in this Honeymoon last time. I Scream, You Scream hadn't tried Stakes Company yet, and Medora was on the sideline. So Circle of Trust was able to take advantage of this race, doing so with a pretty good trip. And I think she's gotten fairly good trips in her recent starts. She might just need to improve a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really have many knocks on her overall. This is a nice trip for her. I think at mile and an eighth, she's able to just kind of go a little slower early on and then get that turn of foot going. And she's just another one in here who I think will take a little money and maybe give us a price on a horse that I like and I think that you like too. So for me, I really wouldn't knock you if you like her. I just like others a little bit more.
I mentioned that there are 2 East Coast shippers in this race. One of those is the number 3 Whiskey Decision. We'll take a look at her most recent race when she was the winner of the Christiana Stakes at Delaware in her last start. This one going from Delaware to Del Mar, a move that you rarely see. But this filly has been just perfect in her last 3 starts, and especially since getting on the turf the last couple of times. She was a visually impressive winner 2 back at Churchill Downs, just really powering through the wire that day. And we saw the same attribute last time in the Christiana, was once she hits that top gear, she just doesn't stop on through the line. It is a much tougher field than she's been facing in her last couple of races, but not really sure where this filly ceiling might be.
Yeah, this is a very, very nice move for Delacour to bring her in here because she fits well with this group on speed figures. And while she hasn't been in against graded stakes company, this doesn't really feel like a true grade one race because we have a lot more of, lower level graded stakes horses in here. I think she's one of the real horses to beat in here because, as you were pointing out, she may have a couple more steps forward, David, that we haven't even seen. She may have a ceiling and an upside there in comparison to some of the other fillies in here. She's proven at a mile and an eighth, and visually, she's been so impressive. I think she can adapt to different circumstances too. She has to be a horse in the exotics for me.
The number 4 is Zona Verde. She completes that trio of Phil D'Amato trainees. I think distance is another major concern with this horse, as it is for her stablemate, I Scream, You Scream, and potentially more so with Zona Verde, who they've contemplated sprinting a couple times. She's tried the downhill course at Santa Anita, the mile and an eighth. I wonder if she's going to be able to turn the tables on the stablemate since she wasn't really getting to her last time, really had every chance to get a wider trip than I Scream, You Scream in that San Clemente, but I just worry about the extra furlong for this one a little more.
Almost felt like last time was her spot because in that particular race, she was actually able to keep Maduro pinned in. And she was one of the horses that kind of benefited from Maduro having a little bit of trouble in that last race. So I thought she ran really well. I thought last time was maybe the time you wanted to have her. And this time, again, just think this is a little bit too tough for her, but she does like Del Mar. So maybe you could take that as a real positive if you want to upgrade her.
The number 5 is Buku, who is one of the most experienced members of this field, making her 11th career start in this Del Mar Oaks. And she's another one that's shipping across the country to California for the second time. She actually raced in California in the Breeders' Cup at the end of last year. A little disappointing that day. And she's been a bit of a disappointment so far during her 3-year-old season, considering how well she started off her campaign in the Appalachian. She's lost 3 starts since then. I thought she ran okay in the Regret 2 back. Her Belmont Oaks last time, maybe a mile and 3/16, a little far for her. She also got pushed out at the top of the stretch that day, which maybe muted her late kick a little bit. And I think you could argue that this Del Mar Oaks really isn't a tougher race than the Belmont Oaks. So maybe she's getting some slight class relief after facing the very good Cinderella's Dream last time. I think she's far from impossible at what could be a nice price.
If you took the top 4 finishers of the Belmont Oaks and put them in this Del Mar Oaks, they'd all be live. They'd all take a lot of money. They'd be like really legitimate contenders in here. So I think she fits very, very well just based on what she's done. If you just can transplant those same speed figures over to Del Mar and she runs those same sort of races, I think she hits the board in here. So she's very interesting at a price, especially if she's in that like 8-1 and above range. That makes her very playable in here.
The number 6, Maduro, lost for the first time last out in the San Clemente when she was beaten by I Scream, You Scream, as well as Zona Verde. She had taken a 4-for-4 record into that race. A little surprising that she didn't go favorite in that spot, given how much hype she had generated through those first 4 victories. And maybe that speaks to the fact that she might have needed a race coming off that brief freshening. She was off for 3 months coming into the last race. And also, I just thought the trip didn't really work out for her. She broke a little slowly, had to make a middle move to get into contention. And she was finishing on at the end. I trust her a little more to get the 9 furlongs because she's done it before.
Yeah, and what I really like too is you pointed out the trouble she had last time, but 2 starts back in the Providencia, that was a race that just wasn't really the race shape for her and what she had shown. She showed a lot more positional speed in a race that just had no early speed on paper. She was right up pressing. She kind of moved through horses. It was a real keen, like a nice trick, tactical move by the rider going into the first turn. And I was really impressed that day with her. And then she had the legitimate trouble last time out after having to angle out and re-rally. She was again gaining on the winner that day, David. So to me, she's the horse. I think they'll all have to hold off in here. She's proven in Southern California against this group of horses. And if she just gets a smoother trip, I think she's going to be very tough. Anything over 7-2, I feel like she's pretty playable in here.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what price she does go off at. The 2 outside runners are going to be big prices. The number 7, Sakura Blossom, she was beaten by 3 horses that we already talked about last time in the San Clemente, was second in the honeymoon, but like we said, that might have been a softer field than this. She's got plenty of experience already under her belt, so I wonder how much upside there still is with this filly.
Yeah, they're hoping the blinkers on can maybe just get her a little more focused early on. I just have to watch with her at this level if I wanted to make her more of at the very most, like a bottom of the under exotics horse. And then to the outside too, I think it does feel like these horses are kind of a big long shot compared to the rest of the field. Sea Dancer could really have an impact on the race though, from a tactical standpoint, right? Because if this horse is aggressively handled from the outside and I Scream, You Scream can't take back and sit off, or if Sea Dancer just makes that one work a little bit harder early on, it will really set the race up for some of the deeper closers.
Yeah, the number 8 Sea Dancer does have that early speed. She's also the younger half sister to one of the best turf horses in the country, certainly the best turf horse in California. Johannes hasn't quite shown that level of ability yet, and I think the mile and eighth distance also has to be considered a concern for her. Gino, let's head right into our top picks for this race. And I think we have the same horse on top for very similar reasoning, that being the number 6, Medoro, second off the layoff. She's had a couple of trips recently. She's more proven at the distance. I'm a little skeptical that we're really going to get 5-1 on her. I think she's more appealing than that, but she's probably not going to be the favorite in this race, and there are definitely things to like.
Yeah, and what's nice about her from our perspective, from a betting standpoint, she doesn't have overwhelming speed figures, so maybe she won't be a horse that gets heavily bet because of that. They don't just jump off the page, and some of the others actually have higher buyers than she does, but she's got some versatility. I think she fits well at the trip. Second start back, this is definitely one of the big races they've been pointing for, and I think the trip fits her really well, and looks like we're looking for some of the value horses in behind as well. I thought Whiskey Decision really fits well in here, David, and then we were both pointing out that Huchu just seems like a good fit against a group like this and could offer some value.
It's the number 6 Modoro on top for both Gino and I, and the grade 1 Del Mar Oaks on Saturday. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.